Today, we're going to read 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11 through the end of chapter 9. I mentioned yesterday that chapters 1 through 7 go together, and so we're going to finish our brief discussion on these chapters and then take a quick look at chapters 8 and 9. Starting in chapter 5, verse 11, Paul shifts his emphasis from defending his apostleship to describing himself as God's ambassador. The role of an ambassador was to finish the deal and solidify the relationship between nations. In this case, Paul wants to solidify their relationship with God. He uses the term reconciliation 5 times in verses 18 through 20. You're Christians now and part of God's new creation. Beautiful language there to describe their relationship with God. Let's not lose that relationship by rejecting God's ambassador. Paul, as God's ambassador, appeals earnestly to them in the closing verses of chapter 5. God is making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. For our sake, he made Jesus to be sin, that is, become our sin offering, even though he knew no sin, so that in him we, all of us, might become the righteousness of God. This special appeal continues through the end of chapter 7. Here's a big part of the problem. They're not in a right relationship with God's ambassador, the Apostle Paul. How can they possibly be in a good standing with God and not be in a good standing with Paul? Now, think about this for a moment. Paul is an apostle of Jesus Christ, and he's done nothing wrong to them. And yet here he is, finding himself in the position of having to defend his apostleship. They're holding out on him. Listen to what he says. We have spoken freely to you, Corinthians, and open wide our hearts to you. We are not withholding our affection from you, but you are withholding yours from us. As a fair exchange, I speak as to my children. Open wide your hearts also. Can you hear Paul's passion and anguish and deep love for them? Paul's relationship with the Corinthians has been strained due to several factors. The harshness of his first letter to them, it was scathing. Their hurt feelings because of Paul's change in itinerary. He didn't visit them exactly like he said he would. And there are peddlers of God's word who claim to be preachers sent by God who have been critical of Paul. Now, why would these people do that? One reason is because they consider Paul to be inferior. He's not like them. He suffers in his ministry, and they see that as a sign of weakness. I mean, Paul just can't win with these people. It doesn't matter what he does, his critics will always find fault with him. And they're in the wrong. Paul is an apostle of Jesus, and it's impossible for the Corinthians to be reconciled to God until they are reconciled to Paul. Another part of the Corinthians' problem is that they haven't fixed all the issues Paul brought up in 1 Corinthians. For example, based on what he says at the end of chapter 6, it's apparent that they're still dining in pagan temples, an issue he had discussed with them in 1 Corinthians chapters 8 through 10. Here in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul quotes from the Old Testament twice. In both quotations, God was making appeals to ancient Israel that they not let the world influence them. Paul concludes his appeal by saying this, let us work toward complete holiness. What he means by that is total separation from the world's filth. Paul signals the end of his first major section, 2 Corinthians chapters 1 through 7, by bringing back the word cluster, comfort. Remember we talked about that yesterday? He ends on a positive note by saying this, I rejoice because I have complete confidence in you. Paul is confident that they will be reconciled to himself and to God. And then, in chapters 8 and 9, he turns his attention to a financial collection he's putting together for needy saints in Jerusalem. Paul is in Macedonia and is on his way to Corinth. He sent this letter ahead of him, 2 Corinthians, in order to motivate them to get their contributions ready. That's what chapters 8 and 9 are all about. And these two chapters go together. Why is this collection so important to Paul? Because these are Gentile Christians in Greece who will be giving money to Judean Christians. He wants to help bridge the division that has existed between the Jewish people and everyone else. This collection will go a long way toward reaching that goal. Here's something to notice while you read chapters 8 and 9. Paul doesn't start out by mentioning money. He begins by talking about God's grace. And he ends chapter 9 with this: "Thanks be to God for His inexpressible gift." Please read 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11 through all of chapter 9 today.